The house on Marble Hill. He bought everything but a reason to stay. Silence echoed in his marble halls. Then she entered, with glitter shoes and a deck of cards. "Red 7, she whispered. He forgot the pain for 1 whole hour. By the time his son arrived, he wasn't afraid. And when he left, he didn't leave alone. "Hi everyone, welcome to the Pillow Files. Let's get started." Elliot Branson stood on the marble terrace of Marble Hill as evening painted the sky in pale apricot. Below him, the Pacific stretched into infinity. Even from this perch, the waves seemed small, distant. He folded his arms, glanced down at the 6-car garage docked beside the cliff. Ferraris, Lamborghinis, and a silver Rolls-Royce Phantom, whose engine purred yet rarely left its spot. In the distance, the sun glinted off the private jet parked in its hangar. Frosted glass walls capped his towering mansion, but inside the surfaces were cold and empty, reflecting only his own face. At 52, he had amassed more money than he would ever spend. A vineyard on the Napa Valley floor, Swiss bank accounts, a collection of vintage watches that cost more than most people earned in a lifetime. He could buy whatever he liked, whenever he liked. He owned everything, except the one thing he wanted most: connection. The ubiquitous phone on his nightstand had not rung in weeks. His ex-wives had ceased texting. His son, Connor, no longer returned calls or emails. The last time Elliot spoke to his mother, he offered to buy her a beachfront home. She simply said, "I already have a view. Mrs. Cohen's rose garden across the street." He nodded, hung up, and felt a twinge somewhere deep in his chest that no amount of money could heal. A week ago, his doctor had placed a gentle hand on his arm and announced stage R4 pancreatic cancer. The medical team at Cedars-Sinai had been unable to do more than slow the progression with chemotherapy. They'd parked an experimental infusion pump in his abdomen. A line of nurses delivered fluids and painkillers daily, but he could feel his strength slipping, like fine grains of sand falling through outstretched fingers. Tonight, he sat alone in the grand living room, under a chandelier carved from Venetian crystal, staring at the polished marble floor. No art on the walls. No music. Only the creak of the worn leather chaise he occupied. In one glass-walled corner, orchids imported from Thailand bent toward a light that beamed from an overhead lamp, their petals pale and exotic. He inhaled the sweet, heavy scent. Another fading reminder that life, like the orchid's bloom, didn't last forever. Footsteps approached in the hallway. He looked up as a woman entered. She wore scrubs the color of midnight, with her name stitched in red across her chest. Marisol Santos, RN. She was young, 30-ish at most, and moved with the quiet confidence of someone accustomed to bearing witness to pain. "Mr. Branson, how are you tonight?" she asked. Her voice was soft, measured, as though aware of the fragility of each moment. He waved her closer. "It's cold," he said, as though stating a fact he'd just noticed. "Can you check the radiator?" She smiled, gentle, almost sad. "It's an old system. I'll see what I can do." While she knelt by the thermostat, he watched her. She wiped at a thin bead of sweat on her forehead, then turned to him. "I don't usually bring her, but tonight I thought, maybe you'd like some company." She gestured behind her. He blinked. "Company?" Marisol shifted a pink folder in her arms. From behind her, a small figure stepped forward. A girl with long braids tied with red ribbons, wearing glittery sneakers. A backpack that looked too big for her small frame. She clutched a bright red deck of Uno cards. Her eyes, large and curious, held no trace of fear or pity. Instead, they sparkled with unspoken questions. "This is my daughter Sophia," Marisol said. "She thought you might like some company, Mr. Branson. She's been learning how to play Uno." Elliot felt his pulse quicken. "I don't remember the last time I played cards," he said quietly. Sophia took 2 steps forward. "Do you want to learn?" She slipped one Uno card from the deck and held it up. "This is Red 7. You match the color or number. He managed a nod, his face softening. I suppose I could learn. He leaned forward on the chaise. Red 7. He repeated. She grinned. Your turn. She tapped the top card. He offered a confused look at his lap. Do I have a card? He retrieved his health-monitoring wrist device. Marisol gently placed his hand atop the deck. Swipe your finger over. And here's a few cards. She murmured. He accepted them on the chaise's edge. 5 glossy rectangles, each bright with color, as his eyes flickered across the shapes. Blue 4, yellow skip, red 7. He felt a faint swell of something he thought he'd lost. Curiosity. For the next hour, Sophia meticulously taught him each rule. They sat on the rug, Uno cards fanned, in his hand. She told him stories about her day at school. Art class, where she painted a tree with neon leaves. A math quiz that nearly made her cry. And he listened, genuinely captivated. His former priorities, a deal at lunch, tomorrow's charity gala, slipped away, replaced by something far simpler. Watching a child explain draw 2 with proud glee, and the way her pigtails bounced as she laughed at her own jokes. When his pain medication buzzed through his veins, he felt less of a man trapped by his illness, and more of a boy playing cards on a rainy afternoon. He hadn't laughed like that in years. After a handful of rounds, Sophia looked up at him. Why are you smiling? She cocked her head, eyes full of expectation. He swallowed, just once. Because you reminded me that games exist, he told her, and that life isn't over until you say it is. Sophia nodded, as though satisfied. She stacked the cards in her lap and rose to her feet, brushing her indices across her knees. I have to go home now. Thank you for playing. She planted a quick, soft kiss on his cheek and bolted down the hallway, her glitter shoes skidding on the marble. Marisol closed the door behind them. You okay? She asked. Her eyes were earnest behind a face mask. He slid off the chaise, hoisting himself upright. For the first time in months, he felt his legs trembling under him. But that was a good sign. I feel something I haven't felt in years. She placed a hand on his arm. I'm glad she could help. Over the following weeks, Sophia visited every Tuesday and Friday. Elliot's body weakened, but his spirit brightened. He woke each morning eager for her arrival, clearing away his ivory fur throw and arranging his cushions. On Tuesdays, the pale terrace suited them best, if the afternoon sun softened the chill. On Fridays, the living room crystals scattered rainbows across the walls. Sophia's questions grew more thoughtful than before. Mr. Branson, she asked one afternoon, arranging Uno's wild card in the center of the table. Have you ever cried when it's sunny? He stared at the paper-thin card, the rainbow swirl dancing in the sunlight. I haven't, he admitted. Why do you ask? She shrugged. Sometimes it's easier to cry when everything seems okay. Like if the sun's shining and you're inside, then your tears are just unexpected. Good tears, or sad tears. But everyone looks outside and wonders, why is that person crying? He pondered her words as he matched a blue 4. You have a poetic mind, he said. Most kids your age want to talk about cartoons or video games. She offered a wry smile. I like those too, but when I see someone sitting alone, I wonder why. Maybe you're thinking about something and the world outside has nothing to do with it. She mimicked holding a card, tipping her hand. That's how I feel when I see grey rain clouds. Just heavy thoughts. She gazed out. The window at a cloud drifting lazily over the vineyards rose. Do clouds ever laugh? He watched her, then shook his head. I don't think so. Not like you or I would anyway. She slipped her deck into her backpack. I'll be back Friday. She rose, glancing at him. Thanks for teaching me chess next week. Chess? He repeated, surprised. She grinned. Oh, I know a little from my grandpa, but I want to learn from you. She turned, skipping down the hallway as though her feet had wings. He tapped a finger on his lip, thinking of his own father, long gone. The day he taught him chess when he was 8, he hadn't thought about that lesson in decades. The world had been black and white, simple, stable, but he had been too busy building his empire to notice. Marisol offered him a fresh glass of water. He drank slowly, savoring the coolness. "She's remarkable," he said. Marisol closed her chart and slid it into her scrubs pocket. "She's going to teach you more than cards or chess." She glanced at the unopened bottle of morphine at his bedside. "If you ever need to talk." He nodded. I know. He felt, for the first time, that the unfolding days might hold more than solitude and pain. Sometime around Thanksgiving, Elliot found himself staring at the photos on his bedside table. A smiling bride, second wife, holding his arm. A group of executives at a fundraiser. His mother, in a floral sundress, clutching wild daisies from Mrs. Cohen's garden. Each image reminded him of a world that had receded far beyond his current grasp. He felt the faint edge of regret cutting through him like a knife. He leaned his head back against the pillow, closed his eyes and whispered, "Connor." One Tuesday, after playing Uno, Sophia perched beside him as he lay in bed, propped at a 45-degree angle. A fresh deck of cards lay between them. She flipped over a red skip. He matched it with a blue skip. "I guess you want me to skip a turn," she shook her head. "I want you to tell me about your happiest memory." He paused. The question felt like a chasm opening up in his chest. My happiest memory. He traced his fingers across the deck's smooth corners. "When I was a boy, about 8 or 9, my father took me to a small carnival. The air smelled like popcorn and gasoline. I rode a carousel with wooden horses painted gold. My father lifted me onto the biggest horse and held me from behind. I looked around, lights spinning in circles, cotton candy pink and blue, and I felt safe. For a moment, all I knew was him, and the world was a carousel that would keep turning, no matter what." Sophia shut her eyes, her face softening at the corners. She leaned her head on his pillow. "That sounds perfect. Do you have anything that's small now?" He touched the card in his palm. "My happiest moments are these. When you teach me something new, or when I realize I'm not alone." He exhaled. "I wish I hadn't built walls so high." She opened her eyes and placed a hand over his. "You can tear them down now." Tears he thought were impossible clung to the corners of his eyes. "I'll try," he whispered. Days later, Elliot asked Marisol to bring his cell phone. She hesitated. He had not used it in months, but she fetched it anyway. He told her to open his contacts and call Mum. Through blurred vision, he watched Marisol's fingers scroll through. Names: Joanne Branson, Connor Branson, Gabrielle Branson. He tapped Mom. The ringtone rang, echoing through the bedroom like a funeral bell. "Hi, Mom," he said, voice cracking. "Elliot?" Her voice was sharp with surprise, then pain. "It's been months. Are you okay?" He inhaled. "I'm dying, Mom." He exhaled, battling tears. "I'm sorry I tried to buy you a house. I should have just listened. I know you have your view. Forgive me." She swallowed. "You don't need to apologize for that. I was just proud of my son. I didn't realize. I'm sorry I didn't visit." They spoke for nearly an hour, memories of cinnamon cookies she baked, his first day of school, his high school graduation. When they finally hung up, Elliot felt a warmth in his chest he hadn't known in years. Marisol hovered by the doorway, her eyes glistening. "Thank you," he whispered, to both her and the phone. In the twilight of his life, Elliot turned to his computer for the first time in months. He opened his email, typed Connor Branson in the recipient line. He placed his hands on the keyboard. "Connor, I know I lost you, gave you all the luxuries money could buy, but not a father who was there. I'm sorry. I have days left. I want to see you, to hold you, if you'll let me. I love you. Dad." He stared at the message, heart hammering. When he clicked send, he felt something heavy lift. He glanced at his phone. He'd never bothered to save a draft in case Connor wouldn't answer. 2 days later, his phone buzzed. The screen read, "Incoming video call, Connor." His hand shook as he pressed accept. Connor's face appeared, weariness in his eyes, growing into surprise. He looked older than his 27 years. Beard stubble, shoulders slumped. "Dad," he said. "Connor," Elliot whispered. I love you." Connor swallowed. Then he said, "I've missed you. I'm on my way." Connor arrived at Marble Hill with a duffel bag and red eyes. When he stepped into the vast living room, he froze, staring at his father's weakened form in the chaise. He approached slowly, each step echoing on the marble. "Dad?" he said again, voice trembling. Elliot reached out with shaking hands. Connor knelt beside him, clutching that hand. He saw the faint tremor, the dark circles under his eyes. His father's frailty hit him like a tidal wave. "Sorry," Elliot whispered. "For everything." Connor choked on a tear. "I'm sorry I ran away." He brushed his father's hair back, as though he were a child once more. "I'm here now." Late one night, as the waves whispered against the cliff, Marisol knocked gently on the glass door of Elliot's bedroom. He lay half asleep as Connor stroked his hand. When he opened his eyes, he saw them both. "Can I join you?" Marisol shook her head. "My shift's over. It's okay." As she turned to leave, her daughter appeared beside her, clutching her Uno deck. Elliot smiled at 8-year-old Sophia. She held up a red Draw 2 card, then placed it on his lap. "Your turn," she said softly. He drew 2 cards, managed a laugh. "You win," he said. Sophia patted his hand. "I'll see you Friday." Connor helped him lie back. "That girl, she's something." Elliot closed his eyes. "She saved my life." Connor swallowed. "I'm glad she did." He leaned in, kissed his father's forehead. "I love you, Dad." In his final week, Elliot's strength ebbed. He spent mornings gazing at the garden below as the sun rose over the vineyard, turning the leaves gold. In the late afternoon, when the sky dipped to tangerine, he felt the pull of what was to come. But his family, Connor, his mother, even Gabriel, who had returned with Guinevere in tow after the diagnosis, sat by his side. They watched a simple game of Uno, listened to a child's laughter, and heard his whispered apologies and reminiscences. One afternoon, Sophia arrived with a single silk pouch tied with a satin string. Inside lay the Uno deck they had used, the bright yellow wildcards, the blue skips, the green reverse. He traced his trembling fingers across the worn edges of the cards. "For you," he said. "When I'm gone." Sophia nodded, tears shining in her eyes. "Thank you, Mr. Branson." Connor placed a hand on his father's shoulder. "He'll visit the new hospice," he said. "Let's make sure he does." Elliot Branson died on a Sunday morning when the sky was a pale winter grey. His final breath slipped away as one of Sophia's drawings, a photograph of 4 intertwined hands, 2 young and 2 old, lay on the bedside table. He died surrounded by his mother, his son, his ex-wife, and his loyal nurse. Guinevere lay at his feet. He was 75 pounds lighter than his prime, but he died at peace. Over the bed's headboard hung a whiteboard Eve, his fiancée, had placed there. Love doesn't come in marble. After the funeral, Elliot's will was read. His cliffside estate would be sold. His fortune, 500 million, would seed a national network of free hospices. Each hospice would have rooms like Marble Hill's living room, but instead of marble and crystal, soft carpets and warm wood. Instead of empty silence, board games, books, and children's laughter. No televisions, only spaces for human connection. In Los Angeles, the first of these Branson hospices opened in a refurbished bungalow near the beach. The waiting area boasted a floor-to-ceiling bookshelf, a piano, and a table strewn with board games, Uno front and center. A plaque above the game table read, "In memory of Elliot Branson, making sure nobody dies alone. At Marble Hill, the real estate developers stripped out the orchids and the chandeliers, losing nothing of Elliot's memory. But if you walk through the renovation site at dusk, during the cold months when the sun dips behind the ocean, you might catch the faint echo of a child's laughter. Sophia's laughter, mingling with the whisper of tuxedo sleeves and chattering cards. And, somewhere, unseen, might lie a single deck of Uno cards in a silk pouch. A reminder that wealth, power, and marble cannot buy what a child's smile can. Presence, forgiveness, and the simple joy of playing a game. Love this story? Hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more stories that reveal the quiet power of kindness. Don't forget to check out the video currently on your screen. You won't want to miss what happens when a single moment changes everything. See you in the next one.